But we also can't be limited by what our experiences are, what our history is, what our, how we grew up. And we have to be able to think for ourselves. They can stay home and be successful, and sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. And you might have to figure out for yourself, you might have to create that job.
That's right. That's right.
And that's okay. You can do it. You just have to dedicate yourself to it.
Do you know how to properly shake someone's hand? Well, today's guest has spent nearly 30 years teaching students the skills to succeed. Let's get into the episode and find out who it is. Welcome to Me and Poverty, a podcast about breaking barriers, building bridges, and changing lives, one story at a time. Today's guest is Marcy Ward Hanson. Marcy is a graduate of Sheldon Clark High School and Morehead State University. She has 30 years of experience as an educator, with 29 of those as a high school specialist for Jobs for America's graduates. Hanson has demonstrated extraordinary implementation of the JAG national program model, leading to local, state, and national individual and site recognitions, including the JAG National Legacy Award. Hanson has served as JAG Kentucky State Data Manager, Executive Director, and has now added JAG Kentucky Senior Vice President of Operations, where she is overseeing the brand new JAG Out of School program model. Marcy has been married for 26 years to her husband, Andrew, and is the mother of 2 sons and 2 fur babies. Marcy, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored, more than honored to be here.
It is truly, truly an honor to have you. And I told you before we started, I feel like I'm dealing with a professional here, so I need to step my game up. I start nearly every episode with the same question, Marcy.
Okay.
What is your relationship with poverty?
How I guess I relate most to it is so my dad and his mother, she was always wanted her children to be, they never went to college or did anything like that. They had a large family and a very small house, and she wanted them to be successful. She insisted that her children all go to college. And so her oldest son, my Uncle Lonnie, went to Morehead, where he later became a professor. And he insisted that my dad and my uncles all went to college, and he helped them along the way because they literally had nothing growing up. So they all made their way to college. My dad was worked in the Board of Education, and my uncle was the superintendent for Fleming County Schools. My other uncle was a professor at Morehead State. I saw how they grew up, and education was very important. My grandmother thought that was the way out of poverty, was to have a good education. And so, that was what she instilled in them, and that's what they instilled in their families. And I would have to say also that my dad taught me that everyone had a role to play. And that was something as a teacher that I tried to bring to my classroom. I always tried to look inside
Absolutely.
of every student to try to see what it was that they had to offer, and that I have to understand that sometimes, they were coming from terrible conditions and terrible situations, and, but that didn't mean that they couldn't be and achieve every single thing that they wanted to achieve. I had no intention of going into education at all. I was planning to go into broadcasting and be the next anchor on the NBC nightly news. But, sometimes your plans don't go exactly the way that you think. We have a huge family of educators. And so I wasn't planning to be one of them. And I kept changing my major.
When I worked in higher ed, I think it's the average student will change their major about 4 times nowadays. So don't feel bad. You're not
Well,
alone.
that was pretty much me. And my dad said, "You know what?" One day he said, "You know what? You if you want to major in whatever," he said, "you can do that." He said, "But you're going to have to get an English degree." He said, "You're going to have to get a teaching degree." And he said, "And then if you want to do something else, then that's on you." He said, "But I'm not paying for anything else." So that was how I ended up with an education degree. But I my dad knew way more than I knew, and he knew he thought I would. He told me I was going to be a great teacher someday, and I was like, I'm never going to be a teacher. But here I was. So,
I would wholeheartedly agree with your dad, Marcy. So
well, I appreciate that. I ended up going into teaching, of course, and I never looked back.
for those that are unfamiliar, could you tell our audience a little bit about what JAG is?
I sure can.
It's embedded in me. Of course, I know what it is, but could you tell our audience a little bit about it?
Sure. So, JAG is a school to work transition program. It's designed to help youth. I actually always described it kind of as a leadership program because what
Yeah.
I felt we were always doing was creating these incredible leaders who were going to go out just like you and take over the world someday. And I thought that's kind of what we do. We're preparing them to go into either to college or a career. We teach job skills. We do community service projects. We do leadership projects, and we have competitive events, all of which develops the person that you are.
Yeah, I remember being scared to death. You told us one day we were going to learn how to properly shake a hand, and I was like, "What? I've been going to church my whole life, and I've been doing this wrong." Like, so even
It's a
something
skill. People
that's right.
don't realize the importance of that skill.
I remember learning tips all the way back as a sophomore that I still implement to this day,
Well,
and
good.
that's how you know it's real, right? So, what's the difference in JAG high school or middle school program and a out of school program?
So, what I'm doing now is the out of school program. So, what we do is that we look at young adults who are ages 18 to 24 who have either dropped out of high school and need that little extra push to either complete their GED or they have a high school diploma, but they don't have the skills that you learned in JAG to go out into the world of work and be successful. So we work with them out of school, just kind of like what we did in school. We teach them employability skills. We teach them how to be leaders. We work with them on engaging with employers. We also do field trips and guest speakers. It's just kind of a different type of field trip and guest speakers, and they can compete too.
Being somebody that grew up wanting to play competitive sports a lot more than I got to because I had to get a job and kind of crawl my way out of the poverty I was born into, but there's definitely this side to this competitiveness that helps reinforce for a lot of students. I remember, so for those that don't know, we would compete at the state level, national level. I didn't get to go national, but I got to compete on the state level. And what I competed in was phone interviews. Like, a lot of people were just so intimidated by it, but I would put on almost my best radio voice,
Absolutely.
and I remember being in Frankfurt or Lexington. It was probably Lexington. I had to go into a hotel room, random hotel room, dressed to the nines, scared to death, sweating it out. The phone rang. Sounds like a scary movie, and to a lot of people, it probably would have been, but because of Marcy and her class, I was ready. I was going to crush it, and I don't know what I placed that day, but
First.
yeah, probably, and with the help of you, I'm sure I did. But that was just so cool. So handshakes, phone interviews, panel interviews.
Job interviews and a panel.
Yeah. I've always, and you can ask Daisha, my wife, I've always felt like I had a leg up on people. JAG gave me confidence when I had none. You weren't personally impacted by poverty, but you worked closely with students who have. What would you say is probably one of the biggest or some of the biggest barriers that kids in poverty face?
Well, the one thing that I see the most is that it's kind of a mindset. They That's what they've seen. They've seen people who didn't work and people who didn't thrive on success, who didn't value education, who didn't value, the importance of a job, and giving back to their community, all of those things. And, I think that's probably the hardest thing to overcome. But do I think you can't? No, I think programs like JAG that give students that sense of ownership and that sense of belonging and that those leadership opportunities, that is why those are so important. They make the difference in young adults who really don't have that idea carved out of what they want to do to be successful.
Or that example to follow.
Or that example to follow.
Yeah. Me being a first generation high school grad, even looking at my older brothers, unfortunately, 2 out of 3 of those didn't graduate high school. So I didn't have anybody beyond them or in my own house to really look to for guidance, right? If you're ready to dive deeper into my story, be sure to click the link in the description below. Get your copy pre-ordered today from Kickstarter. Thank you, guys. Let's get back into the episode. Can you walk us through some of those recognitions that you or JAG have received over the years, national recognitions and the stuff that maybe we mentioned in your bio?
Well, as you know, I'm very competitive. Like I am super competitive. I like whatever, but I have high expectations, and I always felt like, if you explain those expectations, the students understand, and they want those they have those similar expectations.
I remember you telling us that if we wanted to go to state, we better be doing X, Y, and Z. Like we weren't getting a pass. So amen.
Right. Well, but part of that is just understanding that, if you are going to be successful, it's just like in life, you have to make those plans, you have to go through the proper steps, and you have to prepare. I mean, it didn't really matter necessarily to me if we won first place, as long as we did our very best. As long as everybody did the best job that they possibly could, that was the thing that I was always most concerned about. The recognitions I was most proud of is our JAG program at Sheldon Clark / Martin County. That
last graduating class of the old Sheldon Clark building right here.
That's crazy, but and that's a whole different topic that we can get on for a long time. We won the state championship for 19 years. I have to look back at that to be for sure. But there was a lot of hard work that went into that. We learned what we needed to learn and prepared for it all year long. And so I think that's the award. If I was looking at the things that I was most proud of, it was that we, not me, but because I literally didn't do anything, it was all you, the students, that you were able to achieve that success and establish those high standards for yourself and I see so many of those students that were always such good competitors, and I see that that kind of has followed them along in life, and that they set those high expectations and are successful outside of our high school program.
Not many people can say they've won that many, right? And of anything. So I'm sitting here thinking, I think the Lakers have 17 NBA championships, and I think the Celtics have just overtaken them with 18. But they're still trying to catch up to Marcy. I mean, JKG. No, make sure you use that, okay?
I will do that. That is going to. I'm going to write that one down for sure.
So we don't need names, anything like that. But what would you say is? Can you recall a success story that you remember over the years?
It's hard to choose exactly one. I think one of the ones that. Without naming names.
That's right. I'm trying to keep you out of trouble here. They say, teachers always say they don't have favorites, but
I had a student that came from poverty. She lived in the head of a holla, and her parents hadn't graduated from high school, but they were great parents. I mean, they really were great parents, but they just didn't have that educational background, and they would do whatever they could to support her. They just didn't know what to do exactly to support her. Nobody thought that she would be able to be successful, and so she ended up, she was the president of our JAG class, and
Yes.
and she went on to college. I took her to register because she didn't know what to do or how to register
Yeah.
for classes. So I took her over to
Take that, poverty. Marcy's stepping in. That's what I'm talking about.
And so on to college. She ended up graduating with her degree. She was the president of the Student Government Association and gave speeches at graduation and talked about what JAG had meant for her in her college graduation speech.
Yeah.
And she went on to Moorhead, and she is a physician. Right now, she's a physician's assistant.
That's what I'm talking about.
And she has a great career, her own home, a wonderful family, and has helped. Through those experiences, she has helped her own family and such successes from them as well.
Yeah, it's all about changing family trees at the end of the day. So my family, my grandparents did the best they could, but they had I want to say a 6th and a 8th grade education. I want to say, so they weren't helping me. They weren't helping me fill out the FAFSA. I can tell you that, Marcy.
I almost need somebody to help me fill out Carson's. I'm like,
oh my gosh, it's
so complicated.
Yeah, and it's just it's awful. We can say it. It's okay. So you've had 30 years education experience. What would you say you're the most proud of over that career?
Oh my gosh, Joe, that is I would have to say, as a teacher, that what I'm most proud of is students that are just like you. I mean, to be here and to see you, that'll make me cry. But to see you and all the success that you've had and so many other students,
Sure.
that's what it is.
I appreciate that. And I know the lives that you've impacted over the years. And I've had conversations with many of them since we graduated. And just you still being so committed to all of us it's unlike anything else.
It was my job to make sure to do everything that I can to help you all be successful, to help the students, achieve and have the best high school experience possible.
And you say it's your job. Well, it's every teacher's job, but, and I've talked about this on previous episodes, you all have a lot on your plate as a teacher.
Oh my gosh.
So what would you have any advice maybe for a new teacher that's about to go into it, or a teacher that's been at it for a while, but they're kind of just going through the motions? Would you have advice for either of those people, Marcy?
If you're a teacher who is just going through the motions, then you need to switch. And I'm not saying switch out of education, but you need to switch to a different avenue so that you can find that passion again, because there's nothing worse, than not going to your job every day and feeling passionate about what you do. It's just like what I taught in class. When you have a job, you should want to go there every day. You should feel good about it. And it should be something that's more like a hobby.
Yeah.
That you're getting paid for. And so I would definitely, because there are many different career opportunities out there. So I started out teaching English, which I like. I really like teaching English. I guess I taught for a half a year. And we got the grant for JAG, and they asked me if I wanted to do it. And that was the thing. I found that passion, and it was just something that I always had. As long as I was teaching JAG, I just had this passion because it was different. There was something new and different all the time you could have. And, how I would come up with some big crazy project for us to work on. And that was great because it was something that challenged you all the time. And if you're in a rut, in your teaching career, then you should try to find something that challenges you and that you have that passion that will renew that passion for you. And for new teachers, it's pretty much the same thing. They need to decide what it is that they're passionate about and try to go into that. If they love the library, then they should pursue a degree as a librarian so that you can get that you can do that. If they enjoy that, if they want projects, teach them in your classroom. I think the greatest thing that's happened in education is project-based learning. Now, as a whole, throughout education, I always kind of did project-based learning even before it was a thing, because we always, like you said, when you were talking about panels, it was easier to teach someone how to do an employment interview if they were actually acting it out and taking all the roles and seeing what everyone was doing. So I think project-based learning has really changed education as a whole, because now everybody's doing it and everybody can do that hands-on learning. And I think that is, if you're in a rut and there's no place for you to go, get into project-based learning and figure out how you can change the format of your classroom.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm hoping I get a few teachers watching this, and I think your experience that you've gained over the last few years is going to be huge for them, and they're just trying to find their way, I'm sure. Just like anybody in any new employment, having a sit down conversation like this, I think more people need to do it and share more stories and inspire a few more people. So what is Carpet Maze?
My favorite thing. That has been the hardest thing about going into the out of school, leaving the in-school program and going to the out of school program, because I don't have anybody to do Carpet Maze with.
Yeah.
So the Carpet Maze is an electronic learning system. It is a leadership and teamwork activity where students work together to be able to cross, making the least number of mistakes possible, and they can't talk. And it creates confidence. That was why, and I don't know if, like, when you were a student that you realized the reason, but I always did Carpet Maze before I did public speaking, because students,
looking back, I can definitely see that.
Students gained confidence, and they were understood, that they were all on the same team. Because I think, team building is so important, because whether you're in high school in a class or whether you're out in the real world, you're always on a member of a working team.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, how that team works and who they are, and you have to trust them. And Carpet Maze was fantastic for that, because it created that trust and that confidence that they could be successful.
Yeah, that it definitely forces you to do all of those things in the best way possible.
In the best way, yes. I loved it. I always loved it because, of course, I'm competitive and I like to see the competitions come through. But I like the result of what it does, and students don't really realize at the time that they're gaining all those skills, those leadership and teamwork skills. Until it's there.
Yeah. I certainly didn't know until it was probably in my DNA from playing so much Carpet Maze. I'm finding what I'm most passionate about and finding a way to bring other people in on it. Like, what? That's a wonderful life, right? So,
well, it's that journalism. When you were in journalism all those years ago, and you were learning all those skills, so here you are putting them to work.
That's right. 100%. And my gosh, who would have thought? Like, who could have looked down? I know you did, because you had seen it years before me too, but I had no idea. And I'm just so grateful for it all, Marcy, like in the bottom of my heart. And I always will be. And I'm always going to be a champion for JAG.
As a teacher, one of my most, and I would tell this to anyone, and I have said this before, one of my most proud moments was we had a state board meeting at the new high school, and I invited you to come and speak.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when you were on that stage and you just had such control and you spoke so eloquently about what JAG had done for you and what your experiences had been and the things that you learned, that was definitely one of my most proud moments because I was able to see it all soaked in.
I think a key thing too is, Marcy, you spent years equipping people, but you've also encouraged us that we don't need to run away from home, right?
Oh,
We,
absolutely.
and you've encouraged us to find ways to. You mentioned community service
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. That I remember endless stories about community service through JAG and that sort of thing. I also remember us filming commercials
Oh, yeah.
outside, and the wind, this particular day, wind was just horrendous. You had us running all over quote unquote campus, trying to find a place that would block the wind so we could
Yes.
record. So journalism to
Good times. Good
yeah, yeah.
times.
If you could change one thing about how I want to say how we as a society, I guess, prepare young people for success for the workforce, what would you want to change?
We all have to remember that success is something that we find. You know, success is something inside of us, and we have to make a choice. You know, do we want to do this or do we not want to do this? But we also can't be limited by what our experiences are, what our history is, what our, you know, how we grew up. And we have to be able to think for ourselves. I didn't want to teach my students what to think. I wanted to teach them how to think. They can stay home and be successful, and sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. And you might have to figure out for yourself, you know, you might have to create that job.
That's right. That's right.
And that's okay. You can do it. You just have to dedicate yourself to it.
I've recently started a new book, and this will be on my newsletter at some point, I'm sure, of probably one of my favorite books from 2025. But The Courage to Be Disliked. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have not.
I'm only about halfway through, so I can't explain it that well, but it's along those lines of what you're talking about. Being unique is not a bad thing. And going against the grain a little bit is where the most success can be found, and even more so the courage to be disliked, that takes a lot of courage. When I was a financial aid director, for any of my students that were to ever see this, who knows, I had on my whiteboard for all my work study students, success is found just outside your comfort zone. So I think
that's great advice.
yeah.
Is that included in your book? Is that in your book?
If
I can't wait to read your book.
well, that one may need added. I can't remember. There's just little pieces, right, that you pick up over the years, and definitely, if it's not in the book, it will be. So, but I appreciate you saying that. Hey, maybe we need to think for ourselves more, and that's huge. So it kind of aligns with the courage to be disliked. What's next for you, and what's next for JAG Kentucky?
Our out of school program we have it in Martin Lawrence, Boyd, and Greenup counties. And so we're hoping in the next year to add 2 more programs. In 5 years, we're hoping to have 10 programs. So that's kind of the direction that I'm in right now. Our state program we have 104 high school, middle school, and alternative programs right now. And so we're hoping to add maybe another 20 in the next year.
Wow.
So we're growing and building and taking over the entire state of Kentucky.
That's what I'm talking
Trying to
about.
anyway.
You keep going. You keep going. If you need my voice ever lended, you let me know. We'll
Well,
get you there.
I know, and you know that I will. You know that I will call you and ask for your assistance at any time. You
Yeah.
never know when that'll come up.
Marcy, this has been fantastic. I've taken up enough of your time. I truly appreciate you doing this, and I thank you for the investment that you've made all these years. And it's not about quantity in any way. It's the quality that you have offered your students, including me.
I tell you this as a teacher and a friend, because I hope I'll always be both to you. I can't wait to read your book. I think you sent out the email and I immediately hit the button so that I could join, and paid my down payment so that I would be first on the list, because I just cannot wait to see what you have written. Poverty is so complex. We can use that as the stepping stone to achieve great success, just as you have. I have to say this too. So you took me on a tour in Lawrence County and took me to all the different locations.
Sure.
And when I came back, I cried to my mom on the phone. I said, because it just brought me so much pride to hear your enthusiasm, to hear what your plans and the work that you had put in, the designs that you had created on the business fronts. And I thought, God, if I just had a little bit to do with that, nothing could make me any prouder than that.
Well, you definitely had a lot, and I know quite a few people that would agree. So thank you so much, Marcy. And for anyone listening, if you find content like this meaningful, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notification bell so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Marcy, you have plenty of journalism experience. Would you care to sign off for us today?
I would be honored. And remember, keep sharing stories, and we will see you in the next episode.